Hello and welcome to another thematic video on the work.knits YouTube channel. For those of you who are returning viewers, thank you so much for joining me again today. You'll be very aware of what I'll be covering. For those of you who are new to this channel and are spotting this as your first video, welcome. This is not a standard podcast episode, and so feel free to join us here, but if you'd like to kind of touch base, get some background, then one of my other podcast episodes might be a better starting point. Now, you can hear some wowling in the background. I'm going to try and continue to record even though my little kitten is playing around in the room. She's been very, very needy recently, so I'm disinclined to lock her out, but apologies if the noise is a little bit annoying. So, today, what are we talking about? We are talking about a review of Wonderwool Wales, which was a yarn festival that was held this weekend just been in the UK, and this was my very first yarn festival, so I thought I would split this video roughly into two. I will first talk about some kind of key takeaways, I guess, for me, some learnings, things I really enjoyed, things that I wish I'd had more time for, and then I will also cover in the second half of this video yarn acquisitions, what I got up to at the festival. So hopefully this is of interest. I thought I'd keep this outside of a regular podcast episode just because this is probably going to be fairly chunky in and of itself, but you will of course see what I do with the yarn and probably hear more about yarn festivals in the future. I'm going to kick off by saying apologies that I am not wearing knitwear today. I'm in a fleece. It's a really, really cold period in the UK in the last like 3 or 4 days, which has been terribly timed with me deciding to do a spring clean of all my knitwear. I kept one item out of that spring clean for the yarn festival this weekend, but everything else is being kind of soaked, aired, etc., and therefore was not available to wear. So sacrilege, I know, but please forgive the lack of knitwear today. I have not got a drink, but if you would like to grab one or you already have, I hope you've got something nice to enjoy. Sit back and relax and we'll chat yarn festivals. So right at the top here, let's talk about my approach to this festival. So I put it out to all of you. What are your recommendations when it comes to yarn festivals? Which ones have you loved? Which ones have you not loved? How would you recommend approaching them in terms of, do you go with a set number of patterns that you want to buy yarn for? Do you go with like a kind of checklist of things you want to do? Do you just take it a bit more relaxed? And I got back such a broad array of suggestions and comments, so thank you all for those of you who sent me ideas. And I think one theme was that many people would go with one approach and always ended up switching. So with that in mind, I felt I could not go wrong in how I approached this. Given it was my first, I was keen just to absorb the atmosphere, just to kind of go with the flow and see what drew my eye, what I loved, but I did have a set of rules for myself on what I wasn't allowed to do. So as an example, in the past I've been very drawn to buying singular skeins of something that catches my eye, and if there's anything that I've learned, single skeins are so difficult to then use unless you have a vast quantity that are all on roughly the same base. So I really wanted to make sure that when I was buying things, I was buying them in quantities that would make something, either a quantity for a hat or a quantity that in and of itself would make a shawl, etc. That was my kind of one of my rules. And my other rule was that I very much wanted to be there as a consumer from the knitting industry, a kind of lover of knitting. I didn't want to make this about my podcast and my YouTube channel. Because, you know, look, these yarn festivals are amazing opportunities to network with people, and I really wanted to meet people, but I wanted to meet them as knitter to knitter. I didn't want to be pushing my podcast and kind of, you know, talking to people about the podcast. I just wanted to be there to enjoy looking at yarn, squishing yarn with my mum and my aunt. So those were kind of my rules, and yeah, having said that about my rule with the podcast, it was something I do kind of wish I'd done, is get a kind of tote bag made up for the event with work knits on it, and make sure that tote bag had some pockets for flyers and business cards, etc. that were on all the stalls, so I could separate those out from my yarn purchases. That would be a practical tip I will definitely keep in mind for the next festival I go to. And I think just more the kind of work.knits branded bag, purely because there were some people who were asking me about my knitting and saying, oh, you should start a podcast. And then I was like, oh, I have. And then the conversation got flowing. So actually it ended up coming into conversation more than I had maybe expected or thought I'd want it to. But that was very enjoyable. So what did I end up doing? We went just on the Saturday, not on both days. It was Saturday and Sunday that the festival was running. I didn't sign up to any classes. I'd love to do that in the future, but this was a relatively accessible festival for me in terms of location. It was about a 2.5-hour drive, but when you obviously double that there and back, that's 4 hours. It's already a pretty long day, and I think we arrived probably just coming up to 12 lunchtime, and we left at probably about 4ish, and I think those 4 hours were kind of enough. I'm actually when people meet me, they think I'm an extrovert, but I'm actually an introvert in the sense that I love talking to people, but to fully recharge my battery, I need to be on my own. And I have a tendency to wear myself out because I love talking to people so much that I do it more than I should based on what I need, if that makes any sense. So those 4 hours were kind of perfect for me. I think if I'd done a class and then been there for longer during the day, I think that probably would have been a bit too much for me, given the travel either side. But for a future festival, I'd love to like book somewhere to stay with maybe some other knitters, and then kind of take a more relaxed approach to kind of the travelling and how long I'm there for. So yes, as I said, we got there around 12. We did some kind of group shopping and looking and browsing to begin with. We then kind of reconvened for a coffee, and then we split out and did some different things for an hour or so, just kind of going to the stalls that had most caught our eye individually, and then came back together again. And I think that was a good combination of kind of group and individual shopping. Other than that, I think that's covered most aspects of my approach to the festival. But yeah, key learnings were, I think, just that point around my bag. I didn't really take a big bag. I took like a little crossbody bag, and I do wish I'd taken a tote. The stalls were very good at giving kind of recyclable packaging, but nonetheless I think a tote bag would have been great with somewhere to put business cards. I think my other key learning was that actually, so I didn't research all the brands, and I'm pretty pleased I didn't, because I think if I had, I'd end up going in with preconceptions about who I wanted to go and particularly see. And instead I ended up finding so many new brands that I never knew existed. In fact, all my yarn is purchased from brands I didn't know existed, and that's half the joy. So really, really pleased that I did that. That's definitely something I'd do again, is just go completely open-minded. I did set a budget for myself, and I think that was very helpful. It made me very considered in my purchases, but I also prioritised spending that budget again on brands that I either hadn't come across or I didn't think I'd be able to access as easily. So again, very pleased I did that. I think that I'm going to pause there on kind of an overview of my approach. I hope that is helpful. I hope maybe some of that resonates with some of you. Maybe some of you have the complete opposite experience, and all experiences are valid, and part of the fun of this is that everyone kind of likes to do them slightly differently. So yeah, that was just my approach. So now let's transition into what I got. Okay, I've got everything behind me. In full transparency, I recorded an episode of this first thing this morning. I'm now recording this after work in the evening. We're lucky that the light is beginning to extend here in the UK into the evenings. The clocks have changed, and I'm so pleased it's getting lighter in the evenings, because yes, my recording this morning, I'm not normally a vain person, but I looked absolutely knackered. I probably still do in this lighting and at this point in the evening. But I looked really knackered, and also I was sat down and just my body language just deflated, and I thought, no, this is not what people come for. People come for positivity, and like I should be, it's not about presenting my best self, it's about making sure that I am coming to these episodes ready and in the zone to present to you all, rather than kind of squeezing them in and then feeling hurried. So I really hope this one feels a bit more like better paced, and Like I've come very intentionally, that's a very good word, I've come intentionally to record with you all. So I'm stood up, which hopefully makes it easier to kind of turn around, grab bits. There's not hopefully going to be too much rustling because I've taken stuff out of bags, but do bear with me if I'm looking away from the camera at times to pick stuff up. So speaking of, I got straight into the venue, and one of the first yarn brands that I came across was a brand called Marina Skewer. I hope I'm pronouncing the surname correctly. And this yarn brand is like the blend of all things I love. It's British wool that's local to me, that's spun in the UK or in Britain, and that is dyed very, very close to where I am. But I had not come across it before. So that was a kind of perfect storm in a cup, if you know what I mean, in a good way. That was like everything with just the stars aligned. So what did I get? I got 5 skeins of DK weight yarn, as I say, from Marina Skewer. This is called Mendip DK is the base, and that's because the sheep they live on an eco-friendly farm in the Mendip Hills. They actually live on Fernhill Farm, if you've heard of Fernhill Fibres. The wool is then, as I said, spun in Wales, and then it's hand dyed in Wiltshire by, I believe, Marina. I think the brand is named after the individual. And they say that this is perfect for colourwork, cables and steeking. It is a woolen spun, springy and rustic yarn. So this is Coal, and in brackets it's got Cloudy. I think that's the sheep's name. How sweet is that? So this is Cloudy, and it's coming up pretty true to colour on camera there. I've then got a single skein of Rose, and this one has got Sunny written on the tag, which again I think is the sheep. And then these 3 are also from Sunny, and this is just called Sheep, which I love. So some of these are looking a little bit tousled because the kitten got hold of one of them, which I was not very pleased about. This cream base, I don't know if you're going to be able to see on camera, you probably can just about there, but it's got kind of grey fibres in it, so it's not just a solid cream, it's got a real variation in it. It's really like subtly tonal, and I think that's beautiful, love that. So really looking forward to knitting this up. In terms of what I'm going to knit with it, sorry, as always, hair. In terms of what I'm going to knit with it, I could knit a slipover with maybe some mosaic knitting in these as contrast colours. I could also knit a top with short sleeves, or I could separate some of these out, so I could do the creams with the grey and then incorporate some yarn that I'm about to show you, and then make a hat out of this, or I can make a shawl. There's so many options, and I want to keep my options open with this because I haven't tended to buy DK weight yarn. I don't want to go too much like on about it on this podcast because it's a tricky topic for everyone, but just budget wise, DK weight yarn hasn't been the best use of my money in previous years, and so now I'm kind of trying to save up more and buy less one-off fingering weight yarns and save that money instead to buy kind of collectives of DK weight yarn. These skeins are 50 grams each, so I've got about 250 grams of this, and yeah, it was at a pretty, well, again, as I say, tricky to know, but a reasonable price point. So yes, very, very pleased with this purchase. So this is my very, very first purchase. I then ended up at a booth for, or a stall, whichever one you want to call it, for one of my long-term favourite small hand dyeing businesses, which is Knits. That they were the people that I purchased my first hand dyed skein from. It was the Squiggly Squirrel colourway on their 4-ply BFL base, and I have now purchased myself 2 mini skeins in their colourway Rust. This is kind of coming up darker on camera than it is in real life. It's got a bit more of a zing to it. That's maybe a bit better. It's absolutely stunning. This reminds me of like, oh, it's so evocative of something to me, but I'm trying to figure out exactly what it is. This reminds me of making flapjack with my mum when I was like 6, and when you add the butter and the sugar together and the golden syrup and you melt them all together, it makes that caramel, and that is exactly what this is, with like hints of marmalade and toast, and it's very evocative of those kind of very homely things for me. These are fingering weight minis. I believe they're 20 grams, and I am hoping to either hold them on their own, like single strand as colourwork yoke or contrast in a shawl, or I could hold them double and I could pair them with the DK, because the orange and the grey and the cream, that's making my heart sing, so that's also an option. But yes, my mum bought 2 full skeins of this colourway. I think it's called Rost, R-O-S-T, but that could be me misreading handwriting. And again, just really pleased to be able to touch base with the River.knits booth. I didn't get to speak to either of, oh blimey, names are eluding me right now. I didn't get to speak to either of the owners, but that's because everyone was very, very busy. And I'd say that actually was a kind of a trend across the yarn show, was, you know, that those who are exhibiting are so busy talking to so many different customers, trying to kind of keep shelves restocked, trying to keep track of what they've sold. I mean, I've not on that scale, but I have been a stall holder before, and it's lovely, but it's stressful. And so yeah, I was very keen not to kind of overload people with trying to have full-blown conversations when they're trying to run a stall. So yeah, 2 minis, that was my second purchase. The next purchase I'm going to show you is going to be quite hard to show all of it, so I'm going to try and insert pictures here and here over my shoulders of the colourways that I got. But essentially there was a woman running a stall that had kind of antique fibre arts tools, and then she also had these big baskets sorted into kind of colour groups of these petal shaped balls. I have no idea what these weigh, and I have no idea how long how much yarn's in these in terms of length and meterage. And I have no idea of colourway names. All I know is that it's approximately an Aran weight yarn. It's incredibly rustic, good toothiness on it. It kind of feels like, in a good way, it feels like a carpet. It feels really sturdy. And they were 50p each. So I just couldn't resist. So as you'll see from the pictures, I got one that was in a kind of pink, I got a set that were in kind of pink and red tones, and I got another in a neutral set. And yeah, absolutely amazing. So I think all of the balls together were about £14. So yeah, I must have got over 20. Maybe, I'll need to count them all up, but yes. No, they were less than that, I think I've got about 20, and they were maybe about 10 quid, and then I added something in for my mum. So yes, amazing. I think out of these, depending on how toothy they come up when you knit them up and how much meterage I get, I'm thinking of either doing 2 kind of small like lap blanket type things, or if the meterage is looking quite low, then I might make some kind of rugs with them. I think that'd be beautiful. So we'll see where I get to. If we end up drawing the giveaway relatively soon, then and the winner particularly likes either of these colourway groups, then I would potentially give up a group of them. But yeah, I think they're quite special because they're one of a kind. So I'm happy to share that joy with someone, although I do it with a bit of a heavy heart. But that was my next purchase at the festival. Okay, at this point in the festival chronologically we had like a pause, and then we went shopping individually, and this is where I went a little bit crazy. So first, oh actually, this actually wasn't me splurging, this was really sweet actually. So Mophie and the Squid were there. They do highly artistic kind of super bright, intricate colourways tend to be on super wash bases. I think they've got a 4-ply and a DK, and their store was just vibrant. It was amazing. I mean, you can tell these are their mini skeins on their card. They're like popping. And they were handing out business cards with little free stitch markers. And I don't know how well you'll be able to see this, but it is essentially like a little, almost like a cocktail or like a drink. It's got a little straw, and it's got some like purple glitter and some little like what look like little berries in the bottom. I just thought it was super sweet. I haven't got one of these progress keepers with these little latch hooks. so I'd kind of like to keep this to myself, but again, I'm like, it's quite unusual and I think it's really cool. I do love the stitch markers that are kind of like flowers, shells, those kind of things, but I particularly love the really kind of quirky, like very, very ultra modern stitch markers. I think they're really cool. So I might have to share this again in a giveaway, again based on the individual's preferences. After going by Mophie Squid, and sorry, oh yeah, I forgot to say why I didn't actually purchase any skeins from them, because they are beautiful. I think I really love the really highly visual hand-dyed skeins, but I really struggle to incorporate them into garments that I will then wear. So I think what I might end up doing is purchasing some for like artistic pieces to go on the wall, like making wall hangings from them, but I've just got to be really careful buying them with an intention to make sweaters, because then the sweater never turns out the way I want it to, and it's got nothing to do with the yarn dyers, it's just to do with, for me there is such a big difference between what I find visually stimulating in my environment versus what looks A, good on me, and B, I feel represents my personality in clothing form, and I feel like they are totally different things. It's a bit like colours that I put in my house are not necessarily colours I'd wear. It's that kind of difference. So Mophie Squid very much appealed to me on a kind of visual level, but I'm not sure their palette is quite right for my clothing. So I'm going to have to try and find a way of being able to enjoy creatives such as Mophie Squid, Mophie and the Squid, but haven't quite nailed it yet. So not far from them was Ecounter Yarns, who are based in Scotland. And sorry if that was a really terrible Scottish accent for any Scottish individuals listening. I bought quite a lot here, but there was a reason why I invested. So I bought 4 skeins. I'm only going to hold up 3 because of hands, but I bought 4 skeins of their quartz colourway in their Kinross 4-ply. These are 50-gram skeins. So I bought 200 grams of quartz. Again, not enough hands. And then I bought another 50-gram skein of Scots Pine, which is this, it's showing up perfectly on camera. It's like, I'd say it's a blue, not a teal, but it's got greens in it. And then I bought 1 skein of Inverare. Inverare? We will see. Beautiful light blue, and again, this has got kind of lighter and darker shades in it. So I bought those 6 skeins. Let me talk about those first before I go on to what else I bought from them. So my reasoning behind buying these is Ecounter Yarns, you talk quite a lot about the presence of spinning oil in yarns, how you deal with that pre and post knitting. What I have never seen is 100% natural yarn. So to the best of my knowledge, these are non-superwash. I mean, there's 100% superfine lamb's wool. I'm very happy to be corrected if I'm wrong, but I don't believe these are superwashed. I think they are non-superwash. They are just, you know, raw. But they are spun in such a way that it's got this roundness and this smoothness that is stunning. Like, I really can't tell you, but it's so soft, but it also, you kind of feel the naturalness to it. I can't quite describe it, and I just think the stitch definition is going to be stunning, and I think this could work up into so many beautiful things. It could be a top with these 2 acting as kind of stripes or colour work. It could be a shawl, and it would look beautiful. It would produce the most beautiful draping thin fabric, or like cables. It would look gorgeous in cables. So there's just so many options. So I really wanted to get a decent quantity of a main colour, so if I wanted to make it a garment I can, and then at least 50 grams each for contrast colour or 2. So that was my thought process. I'd never seen a yarn that's still got the spinning oil in that is this sleek and rounded and just clean. I'd just not seen that before, so I'm really fascinated to work with it, and I think they really could become a new favourite of mine. So yeah, keep your eyes peeled. I hate that expression, but keep them peeled. From the same booth, from Ecounter Yarns, I picked up something that, again, I feel like the market is crying out for, so thank you Ecounter Yarns for producing these. They are tiny 10-gram nuggets of essentially, I mean, I think they said these are 4-ply, but they've kind of got a similar look and feel to like loads of your 2-ply jumper weight yarns, so Holscarn, Jameson Smith, JC Rennie, if I'm thinking of the correct thing there, question mark, the other Jameson Smith, because there's 2 of them I think, not quite, and some of the coned yarns, like I'm thinking some of the yarns that Uppingham Yarns do, for example. So I think, as I say, I think they said it's 4-ply, but it's got that kind of jumper weight look, but they're in 10-gram nuggets and they have so many shades. And how often have I done colourwork projects where I just needed 10 to 20 grams? And if you've not done a project before in that colour yarn or that type of yarn, then you haven't got 10 to 20 grams of scraps. So then you end up buying a 25, 50, 100 gram ball skein cone, whatever it is, in order just to get 10 grams. I'm obsessed. If I could have picked up 2 of every single colour, I would have. I just would have been there for hours. But yes, I'm obsessed. I'd love at some point to buy 2 of every colour and do a blanket project. I think these 2 might work their way into one of those blanket projects I have going. They might also work their way into like some colour work on an accessory. I don't know. But they're a very different spin on them to the other 4-ply. This is more of, I'd say this looks to me more like a kind of worsted spun. But I could be wrong. But I'm thinking it's worsted spun. Whereas this is definitely woolen spun. Again, happy to be corrected on all of the above. So that was Ecounter Yarns, and what I also love about this is this yarn is spun in Scotland. This kind of local, low carbon footprint is making my heart happy, so love it. Okay, we're really getting there, guys. There's just a couple more purchases. So, a brand new to me dyer. So we're going, again, most of these I really haven't, apart from River Knits, I'd not come across or bought yarn from any of these before. Gull Rock Fibres, naturally dyed yarn and fibre. Oh my god, look at this baby. Yarn baby. Okay, so this has got like a golden core. It's to do with the like dual process dyeing, so you kind of dye one tone first then the other. They had a blue where the core was so golden and then the rest of the fibre was blue. Oh my gosh, it was gorgeous. My mum picked up that skein because I just told her she had to. But yes, I don't have massive info on this company. I'd like to have more. The store was just beautiful. There was so many different types of yarn there. The colours that were being achieved with natural dye just blew my mind. But I'd like to know more, so I'm going to have to go on their website and work out. But I needed to pick up at least one skein. I've been looking for a mohair the whole festival. Initially I wanted something really bright and variegated because I've never knit with a variegated mohair. But I saw this and this just had to be mine. I just love the shade of pink. It's just singing to me. So this is probably the only thing I purchased without having any idea of what it's going to become. So let's just see. But 50 grams, I think it's about 400 metres. Yeah, 420 metres, 72% kid mohair, 28% silk, and this is their rose gold colourway, and it's been dyed with cochineal and lac. So beautiful. And then the very final purchase was these 2 fluffy babies. Now they are coming up on camera very turquoise, and they're not. The name of this is Sea Green, that's the colourway. This is Cumulus by Spades. Sea Green is what it's actually called, and that's probably better. It's more green than blue. It's coming up very bright blue on the camera. This is 74% baby soy alpaca, 26% mulberry silk. I had to. I have no idea what I'm going to put it with. I do love the kind of pink blue colourway combos. I could equally put it with some greys. This would look amazing. There's so many options. I could even put it with dark grey, or even, yeah, there's just so many options, but I couldn't walk away without it. So maybe I told you a little fib with the mohair. This equally, I don't have an exact project, but I do think I want to use it as colour work, as a contrast, so that the floats on the inside of the project are kind of next to my skin. I think that would just be beautiful. I'm just very excited to have this colour in my stash, because I haven't had this colour in my stash before. So very excited. This stall, and I can't remember if it was the Fibre Spades stall. I must confess, by this point I was kind of a bit tunnel visioned on yarn, and I wasn't so good at looking up at the branding. But they also had Lily Kate Makes, or Lily Kate Designs, Axis yarn, which is stunning, and if I hadn't used more of my budget by this point I would have got some. I am thinking of casting on her thin air sweater, so maybe I could have done with some of her yarn to go with that, who knows. But a really lovely stall. And I think that brings me on kind of finally to, I guess, one other thing that, as from a kind of podcast point of view, I've kind of learned, which is that I really should have taken more photos and that there is such a difference between, and I said it at the beginning, there's such a difference between attending as a knitter, as a consumer, versus attending with the podcast in mind. And on the one hand, I feel like I owe you guys an apology because I haven't got, you know, video footage and photos and things that I can show you. On the other hand, I'm really pleased that I did what I intended to do, which was to go just as me. So there we go. I have left something out from up here because it's not yarn. So for any spinners amongst you who are interested, I actually also did something a little bit rogue. I have had a drop spindle, actually I've got 2 drop spindles since COVID. I would love to spin on a wheel. I found a wheel at like a recycling centre that was going for £35. It's a really old one. It's a kind of castle wheel where the, yeah. I have no idea who made it, so it's therefore proving very difficult to get one spare part, which is just the flyer and bobbin to go with it, but just the flyer is missing. It had a break that my partner and I fixed really easily. Basically just something had snapped halfway down a pole, so we just sorted that out. But yeah, I need to get the kind of parts for it, but that's a project that I'm kind of putting down the line because it's going to require a bit of investment. So I wanted to learn a little bit more with the drop spindle first. I have done loads of like 10-gram balls of yarn with the drop spindle. I've done it on kind of merino fibre, I've done Gotland, which is kind of a longer staple. I've done bits with like fibre that's meant for like what's the needle felting. I've tried all sorts, but what I haven't done is just like committed to, I am going to spin a project and it doesn't matter if it's perfect or not, but I'm just going to do my best. I haven't done that yet because I've been so obsessed with like the weight and the fine, how fine my singles are, and that means I've never plied. So yeah, I am planning on changing that, and these braids had to come back with me. Now this is looking very blown out on camera, but it is bright, I'm not going to lie to you. Yeah, that's probably about right. It's very bright, but as many spinners will know, when you start spinning, particularly where there are patches of white, which this has, it mutes it all as you start spinning it. I have no idea what this colourway is called, because there isn't a colourway name on it. Kelly of Lay Family Yarns was so lovely. I had such a nice conversation with her. They also have a podcast, so please go over and check them out. I will be adding them to my regular watch list. But she was so lovely. She's offered that if I want to email and find out more about the fibre content and all sorts, I can. But I bought 2 of these. I think they have alpaca in them. There seems to be a very, very, very long staple in there somewhere, because I've already started spinning. I could not wait to get home to spin this. So I have, for those who are into fibre prep, and I know I'm kind of slightly coming on to works in progress here, which makes it slightly more like a normal video, but I've got to share the excitement. So what have I done? I was initially spinning from the whole braid width, but I was finding that was it was all drawing more from one side of that than the other. That's just to do with my inexperience. So I ended up splitting the whole braid in half, and then I ended up splitting that in half again, but for a different reason, and that was because there was so much white being fed in from across the width of the braid, but the strand of fibre that I had, the colours were coming out so muted. So what I've now experimented with doing is then splitting it down to quarters, and that quarters then are giving me kind of parts that are almost like barber pole within the single ply. It's giving me density of colour in places, it's giving me bits that are more muted. I'm loving it. So there's lots of experimentation going on. I have spun up probably about 25 to 30%, I'd say. So this is 50% of the first braid. This is then 25%. Well, probably a bit under. And then, get ready guys. This is what I've spun so far. So my singles are definitely not perfect. It's very varied at the moment, but I think before I was trying to spin like a fingering weight yarn straight off, and that's just not going to happen. So with this, I'm going to keep spinning 50% of the total braid, and then I'm going to put it onto a cone, and then I'm going to spin the other 50%, and I'm going to try 2-plying, and that's probably going to give me something like a worsted weight, probably looking at the size of these singles, like an Aran worsted weight. And then with the other braid, I'm going to spin all of that just onto one cone in one long go, and I'm then going to try and chain ply that. So this is just a test for me to just take joy in whatever it is I end up producing, however good or not good it is. Because in terms of, sorry, I'm just reaching to pack these back into the bag. In terms of my spinning experience today, as I said, I took up drop spindling during pandemic, and I'm not at a point where I can like drop the spindle and then feed from up here. I'm very much at like a spin, park, let the, tease the spin, the twist out. That's very much where I'm at. So a long way to go, which is exciting, I think. But anyway, the light is beginning to fade here, and being honest, I probably need to go and have some dinner and figure out what dinner's going to be. But I just really was so excited to jump on here and talk to you all. So I hope the headspace, the communication of the thoughts has been okay. I really hope you've all had a very good start to the week. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'm really looking forward to speaking again very soon, talking about all the whips, normal podcast episode in about a week and a bit. So have a wonderful week, and bye for now.